Hello and welcome. First things, I'm just going to talk about timing. So it's currently 5 past. We're going to try and finish as per our schedule by 10 to, if that's okay, just so we can get back in order because a lot of speakers are struggling to be in 2 places at once as it happens. And we do have a couple of ladies with microphones. If you wouldn't mind putting your hands up, ladies. There we go, there's one anyway. Because we're trying to make this very interactive. Because there's only the 3 of us. We're going to largely gossip amongst ourselves on interesting topics and then allow you the chance to quiz us or make your own comments. If I could have the first slide, please, Raquel. Well, the second slide then. There we go, that's me. Kevin Cunnington, Executive Advisor to the Global Government Forum, formerly the head of the UK's Government Digital Service, and the head of the UK's Government Digital Service is also the de facto head of UK government technology. So in my case, all 17,000 people, $9 billion. Not as much as Claire, as you would have seen, about 1/10, but nevertheless, still quite a lot. I retired a couple of years ago. Before that, I was UK's digital envoy, and now I spend my time doing this, running around the world, having a chat, reminiscing about the good old days and what's gone well and what's gone badly. I'm going to introduce my 2 panelists to introduce themselves, and then I'll come back and talk about the 3 topics on our agenda, and then we'll start the chat accordingly, if that's okay. So we'll need the next slide, please.
Yes, hi everybody. Great to be here with you. I'm really glad I'm gathering my brain cells after a long travel yesterday, but my name is Vigdís Jóhannsdóttir. I am the CMO, or Chief Marketing Officer at the Digital Iceland. We are within the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, an office there within. CMO is kind of, well, in Iceland, we're a small country. So I'm forced to wear very, very, very many hats. But I lead all communication, internal and external, as well as training. So communication comes from, my background is from advertising and then media before that. So my purpose in life is connecting people and getting so in an understandable way. So the tech people can speak, don't speak gibberish, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, that's really good, isn't it? When they don't speak gibberish, that's amazing. Yeah, and I think there's a Richard Gunson, expert partner to Global Government Forum, with CHR Solutions. So my background, I'm really not going to go through all that, but military background, lots of public service and private sector as well. So public sector, large private sector, and actually. Worked with Kevin in one of our large departments in the UK whilst I was in the public sector, developing academies there, digital academies, and I've done that for England, Scotland, and Wales in the UK, as well as much wider, as I say, in public and private sector. Psychotherapist, soldier, and teacher really is my background.
Very good. So back to me. We've got 3 topics on the agenda. The first is a little bit of fun, I guess. Recently, Vigdís hosted the government of Barbados in Iceland, and we're going to talk in some more detail about, surprisingly, that went brilliantly well. And get your thoughts on similar kind of study tours. Who could benefit by coming to you? Who could you benefit by going to see? The second item on our agenda is academies. And I know here in Canada you have a digital academy. I know that because the UK and me helped you set it up all those years ago. So I want to talk about why we think they're not more widespread in the world and what we could do to make, I guess, them more accessible here as well. And then the final item is around capability. And actually, Stephen Burke referred to this in his opening address. He talked about the digital talent program. He talked about the product manager community. And I want to talk about what more can we do to help people like us progress in our careers as technologists within government. And we're going to ask Richard to talk about all the work we did in the UK around what we call the Digital Data and Technology Framework. We catalogued 17,000 UK civil servants according to their skill set, their job function, and their competency. And it still remains a bit of a mystery to me why other countries haven't done the same. They think it's a good idea, but nobody seems to have done it. So firstly, we're going to return to the Barbadian study of Iceland. Now, at one level, that seems rather improbable. And if I were to tell you the Barbadians comprise their minister for technology, their cabinet secretary and head of civil service, their permanent secretary for the minister's ministry, and their chief technical expert. And it was slightly odd wandering around Reykjavik with 4 people who were clearly Caribbean. And I did say this to the cabinet secretary, Donna. I said, how have you found it? It's a little bit odd, isn't it? And she said, when we arrived, the immigration officer said to her, where are you from? And she said, we're from Barbados in the Caribbean. And he said, that's interesting. We've never had anybody from the Caribbean come to Iceland before, which is a true story. We picked Iceland because it's a small country in the Atlantic, like Barbados. Its primary industry is largely tourism, like Barbados, and they have exactly the same population size, about 400,000 people. And that turns out to be quite important, the size of your population. I know Canada's 40 million, UK's 80 million. We have less resonance with smaller countries in what we do to what smaller countries have with each other. And time again, people refer to small countries in those discussions. But rather than me talk about it, I want to hand over to the host, Iceland's very glamorous host, Vigdis, and ask her to describe how it felt for her and what she thought the Barbadians got out of this.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It was really very interesting, and we were very, very proud that the weather was fairly nice. It was almost sunny and 18 degrees. That doesn't happen very often in Iceland, but they were a little cold though. I left my jacket at home that day. Now, it was really interesting in terms of, because, we're both small island states, and the infrastructure seems to be very similar in many ways. So what we have done in Iceland is that we have studied what other countries have been doing, and we've built on that and created our own. So we, as a small nation, we don't have time, we don't have the infrastructure to learn everything by doing. So we take what everybody else has been doing and we learn from the best. So it was really quite an honor to be able to pay it forward and share our experiences. And I think they went home with more questions than they arrived, because they are in a different place in their digitization. But it was quite interesting, and I was able to take, because we're going to talk about educating the public servants as well in a while. But I was able to use a deck or something I have been preparing for over 6 months now, in how we empower the people, the leaders within the agencies that we are working with. Because within Digital Iceland, we're only 11 people. And we can't be we can't be the stoppers to all the digitization that needs to be done. So we need to get the message out there. So educating the people is one thing, but we were able to use from experience, from the gibberish, from all the language, everything, and take it to a level that the ministerial level and the permanent secretaries, they understood quite well what we were talking about. So it's always about people and not about tech, because we've solved the technology.
And I think just context, I maybe should have said this at the start. The UN rates countries on a biannual basis as to where they are in the global rankings. I think Canada's about 30th, the UK's 11th, Iceland is currently 5th, and the Caribbean islands go from about 79 backwards to about 130. So notwithstanding the fact they're very similar in population sizes, and not so similar in GDP as it happens, but similar in population sizes with the same primary industries, the Barbadians got a huge amount out of this because Iceland's so far ahead. And I think the 2 main messages they picked up on was, one, Iceland has great leadership in Andri, who was Iceland's CDIO until recently, actually, who got a lot of his...
Until end of this month.
End of this month. Until he got a lot of experience abroad and brought that back. So he came kind of with a plan and knew what to do. And that makes a huge difference in helping your colleagues understand where you want to get to. The second most important bit of the puzzle was Vigdis as Chief Marketing Officer. And it's Vigdis who kind of compels people to come with them on that journey, both civil servants to understand why they should be doing this and what the benefit are for fellow civil servants, but also the population more widely, why this is important. And Barbados absolutely picked up on these two things very specifically. Good experienced leadership, good communication makes all the difference in trying to get people coming with you. And maybe at this point we should let you all have a little bit of an interaction with us.
I think just
yeah.
There was a bit that I picked up in there as well. You know, when Victor said that people left, Barbados left with more questions than they came with, and I think that's a really good thing. You know, when we're building services, for public, when we're doing this work, right down to the granular level of building individual things, we should be starting with that. You know, we should be starting to hypothesize, is this right for us? Can we take this back? Can we contextualize this for a different island nation? So I think that's a cracking outcome, you know, a really good outcome of that people are going back and starting to ask those questions, starting to hypothesize about this stuff. I think it's a real success.
Yeah, and we are a fantastic test market because fewer people, we can move very quickly about things.
Oh, maybe we try the question.
Sorry.
Where would you like to go on a study tour, and how would it help you and why? And equally, who would you invite to come and see what you're doing here in Canada? And if you're from other countries as well. So if somebody is prepared to have a go at that question, would they mind just introducing themselves and where they're from, and then telling us what you think?
Oh, well, this is like being in Iceland. Nobody's raising their hand. Okay. Luckily,
you don't want us to come out there and get you, do you?
No, but I think because for us, even though we are doing really well, I would really like to visit places like Barbados to be able to understand the place they're coming from. Yeah. They have very nice sandy beaches, yes, but there is a lot to be learned by looking back and understanding where people are coming from. And I think for me, in terms of communication, it is. You can't get people on board if they don't trust what they're doing and you don't trust things that you don't understand. So I think that would be, for me, a very big learning point visiting other countries while nobody's raising their hand. Yes?
So my name's Anne and I work at Global Affairs Canada, and I actually did kind of a study tour in Barbados. I was posted there for 3 years. Wow. And having been posted in a few different countries, most of them are developing countries, I think that they benefit greatly from coming to a place like Iceland. I'd be very happy, having been posted there, to not have to fill out a form 5 times the exact same form and submit 5 copies. Whereas when I was posted in Pakistan, it was 12 copies of the original documents, same thing signed, and then it would get lost. So I think that the countries that are developing in this sense would benefit greatly from that. And Barbados has a great opportunity for this. The challenge is they have a very aging population. So a lot of their young people are not coming back to Barbados. So they're looking at immigration and issues like that. Yeah. I think Estonia is supposed to be really well connected as well. Not that I'd ever thought of going to Estonia, but I think from a perspective of learning from them, that would be an awesome opportunity to go and see what they're doing. And some of the other European countries, Canada is so large that we're not well connected in the sense of connectivity, right? I drive just 6 hours north and I have spots with no signals. Mm-hmm. So that's some of our challenges. When you go up north in Canada and we don't have connectivity. So I think we can learn a lot from Iceland, and I'd love to go to Iceland and do a study tour.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, Estonia is an interesting note.
Before we just take the second comment, Iceland's part of a Baltic collaboration, aren't you? Which I think does include Estonia as well, doesn't it?
Yes, Iceland is in Nordic Baltic, and we're also in Nice, which is has X-Road. So we're running that alongside Finland and Estonia. So there's a lot of communication there. Communication is key.
I would totally agree with that. Something that I would find interesting for a study tour is another country or even organization of countries that works on a federated model like Canada does, because a lot of the issues that we run into are because our data is segmented by province and sometimes we can't integrate those sources. So I wonder if, as opposed to a specific country, something like the European Parliament would be a good place for a study tour in order to see how differing data sets are connected and used for collaboration.
I think I think the EU would be good, but I think it'd be a bit overwhelming, kind of almost like visiting the US. But there are other federated countries of not wildly dissimilar sizes. The UK is actually 4 countries. Australia obviously is a very federated state of the same kind of landmass that you guys are. And also there are other countries like Saudi Arabia, I would say, that are similar kind of population sizes. Not same government model, of course, but similar levels of population size. And upstairs we have a report that we published about a year ago now, where we spoke to a third of the world's countries and asked them about their 7 most pressing problems. And as part of that, we identified 3 solutions to each of those 7 most pressing problems. It turns out most of our problems are pretty consistent between us all. Our solutions to it vary hugely, because we have different constitutions, different cultures, different politics, and different legacies. So I think the EU would be a good idea, but I think there are others, probably like Australia, that are a more natural fit for probably Canada.
I think you're right with the UK, Kevin. You know, how we devolve those social security grants, health, various different things, policing in ways as well, between Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, Wales. So you know, we all need to work together on that stuff. So very much so, it's a model that might interest you.
But it's also since I don't know, you sat down. It can be really, really overwhelming when you sit in front of everything that has to be done. Yeah. So making sure that you're scoping each problem and having a realistic plan in that sense. So looking, starting to look at what's really working well with the small countries. For us, Claire was in Iceland at a conference. We host yearly last week, I believe. I'm not sure what date it is. But and we, after a long discussion with Andy, her head of policy, and they're the same things, even though it's they're dealing with on a federal level. They're missing a few zeros, or we are missing a few zeros. They're 400 million and we're 400,000. So it's kind of, there's a huge difference there, but there are things that we have proof of concept for them that they have been able to use in the last year or 2, and there are so many things that we can learn from them. So visiting Washington would also be very interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think visiting Washington would be very interesting. We're going to move on, if that's okay, to academies, but before I do, just one plug, because the first ever Caribbean Digital Summit is in a week's time in Bridgetown, Barbados. And we do have all 26 Caribbean countries coming. I say countries because people assume the Caribbean's islands, but actually some of them are actually countries in Central America, from Suriname and Belize, right through the Caribbean, which is 1,000 miles long, so it's much bigger than you think it's going to be, all attending. Should we talk about academies? Let's start with Vigdis, because I know you have ambitions for academies, and Richard's going to chip in, no doubt, because you must have spent hundreds and hundreds of person hours teaching in the various academies. So, Vigdis.
Yeah, actually met Richard in London this spring, because we are hoping to be able to take educating all of civil servants in Iceland in terms of digital. And again, it goes to the point I was referring to earlier, is that you can't see opportunities in something you don't understand, and you don't trust things you don't understand. So that has been hugely important. What I've done in the meantime, because there's this thing called inflation and budget costs and things like that that's happening very, very heavily in Iceland right now. But we put focus, talking about scaling, we put focus on those who we are working with. So it's project managers within agencies. We have spent a day with them, and we introduce them to the words of GitHub and feature flagging, and use, telling them everything. It's just empowering them to be able to take the chat at the water cooler, where the anti-digitization people meet up for coffee after a meeting, where they kind of think it's a stupid idea to make everything digital. So we kind of are working on empowering them, and we're also trying to scale up in terms of educating consultants in the way we work, so that they can adapt to, so we can kind of extend on our knowledge and making sure that things are happening within our community, within the Eastern.is community. So yeah, it comes down to accessibility.
Yeah, it does. Accessibility, that growing capability with something like an academy model, it's doable, certainly, but we need other things left and right of that as well. That focus on digital, and certainly those water cooler conversations that we used to get water cooler conversations, didn't we? I'm not sure that we do now post-COVID get many of those really important water cooler conversations, but wherever they happen now, we get those things, don't we? We get that natural fear, and rightly so, of just digitizing everything. And of course, I always go back to my mum gets a plug here. So my 93-year-old mum, engages really, really well with digital services. She writes on her iPad each week a report for the local Women's Institute on her iPad. She's really good at accessing those types of services, but she's deaf, she can't hear people on the phone. So we need the aligned other services to roll with those digital things as well. And that's something that we really look to, isn't it? Right from the first academies that we developed, and we started looking at creating content for those. It is about digital, but it's about, as Victor says, really important. It's about human intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, really. And it's about connecting those people. An awful lot of the stuff that we developed and iterated right throughout the life of those academies, from DWP, Department for Work and Pensions, originally, where we started developing that, through to Government Digital Service, and then I took the model up to Scotland in the UK, and then to Wales in the UK. So actually developing that stuff for those independent nations, for those different nations, it was very much about connecting people, how we grow those not just technologies, but how we grow the culture, how we grow that citizen focus within these things. And that's an awful lot of the success that we've had throughout the years, is making sure that we look at user-centric design, citizen focus, and actually we coined the term in Scotland, we build with people, we don't build for people. So very much taking, our users, our citizen users, and our internal users on a journey with us. So it is multifarious, this thing, and you ain't going to do it with one course. We need to grow that model out and ensure that we get right across a department, not just our digital folk, but right across procurement, HR, finance, all these lined up with this stuff.
And as Claire said earlier, it needs to be multi-channel.
Yeah.
We have to think in that sense. It doesn't mean digital will, take over the world and we will stop everything. Even though I have a dream of a paper-free Iceland, probably not realistic, but I like to aim high. But it's just to go advertising. We're going to be talking about accessibility and user experience in the next room right after this. But I think it's really, really important to make sure that we get people on board with this. And there we have the big countries like the US dealing with the same things as us tiny, North Atlantic nation.
Yeah, and that's really prevalent right throughout when we go from country level to inner country department level. You know, we can look at DWP, 100,000, wasn't it, when we started developing academies within Department for Work and Pensions. And right now, I think the smallest organisation I've worked with in Scotland, 350 people in the National Libraries of Scotland, 350 people. Same problems that they were suffering in a 100,000 strong organisation to 350 people in an organisation. So there's, you know, there are similar themes here, but they need contextualising for yourselves. You know, for Canada, it needs contextualising, and for the other populated nations here, you know, we need to contextualise this stuff.
But Kevin, you mentioned leadership earlier, but that's something you have also, you know, given extra focus, because at least in Iceland, many of the agency leaders and the leadership within ministries, they finished their education without internet.
Yeah.
So things have been changing really, really fast, and we need to make sure that we support the leadership as well, and it needs to be, you know, a focus for every country in mind.
It really is, and it is. You know, you're saying that focus on leadership, and I'm just thinking about something that you know we tend to always cover because it's really important. Is, you know, we tend to educate and try and have conversations about complexity, about complex and emergent environments. You know, how quickly things change, how without experimenting with things, then, you know, we can go off and plan something for 5 years and we come back and I nearly swore then, sorry. But the world's changed. You know, in fact, look at the last 5 years, the world's changed. You know, so planning that stuff out along a protracted path there with some of the things that we've got, some of the problems and the opportunities that are arising for us, we've missed the boat on that stuff. So the experimentation, the complexity, and how do we lead in those scenarios? You know, because it might be different to how we've led, and it's certainly different to how we've managed before. How do we lead in these types of scenarios?
Can I do a quick survey just to keep the interaction going, he says. How many people have been through some form of digital academy here in Canada, digital academy training? So it's a few.
I think we have one of the leaders from the academy there.
No, if you were to do, and having done that, if you were to do that in the UK, half the room would put their hands up. That's the extent of the training. Originally, we trained 10,000 people in the first 5 years alone, 80% of whom weren't technologists and had no intention of being technologists. We simply did it for people in HR, procurement, finance, to understand the processes, because prior to that, they were blockers to the processes, not because they wanted to be, but simply they didn't know what was expected of them and they didn't know how to behave. And we found we needed to get to about 10% of the people who needed to be involved in digital before we got critical mass and critical momentum. And what we found prior to that was when we trained people and they went back to their departments, people would say to them, we don't do it like that round here. And it was only when we got enough people that did it. I mean, we're all smiling because we're all smiling because we've all been there. But it was only when we got to that critical mass that we realised that actually that's when you become digital as an organisation, really.
We're changing culture.
Yeah, it is exactly a cultural change. We do have a comment from the floor.
Is this on? There we go.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, what did you focus on? Getting them up to speed with the tools?
No, it was much more about the two big courses that we used at scale were what we call Agile for Leaders. So it's giving leaders the ability to understand what velocity meant, or what feedback was, or what actually Agile was, an iteration.
Making mistakes.
Yeah, and then and we famously bought a lot of Lego, which we got into quite a bit of trouble for, to get people to do kind of product building exercises, because, you know, it's still the civil service. And the other big course we did was Agile for Teams. So we took entire teams away and said, let's take the table directly in front of me. You're a team that needs to develop Agile services. What are all your respective roles in that? And how would you play them? And then they were by far the biggest courses we did. And then I know Richard wants to talk about this in the third session. We specifically moved on to capability training, like being a better product manager, being a better programmer, being a better delivery manager. But they were the first.
So it sounds like a lot of process redesign.
Yeah, it's really just educating people around agile.
Yeah,
and
it's process redesign certainly on some of the things, but it is, as I say, as I said before, it's about what is the world like now for an awful lot of people. We're not in a Taylorist society now with these things. We can't determine necessarily the relationship between cause and effect on a lot of the decisions that we're having to make. So how do we do that? So there's introducing frameworks around that, introducing the comfort level around that as well. How do we utilize complex environments for our benefit? And then there's things like, as Kevin said, it's as a leader, I don't want you running the metrics, I don't want you running the show, but I need you to understand what these things are. I need you to have a comfort level there so that we can devolve decision making to an appropriate level where they are better placed to make decisions and we can do them much more swiftly. So lots about governance, lots of, all these really whizzy things about governance, but appropriate governance. Yeah, tools, techniques, those types of things, without a doubt. But as Victor said a couple of times, it's about changing the culture here, the culture and the mindset, really.
I think we had one question and then we'll move on to the final session, if that's okay. Hopefully it just works. I think they turn it on from the desk.
Oh, they turn that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So hi, Alain Grignon. I'm the manager for policy innovation and experimentation at Natural Resources Canada. And I'm really curious to know your thoughts on this. When we talk about digital culture, really what we mean by culture is just changing people's habits.
Yeah.
And habits come with repetition. When we do training, and we do a lot of training, we just ran an experiment on knowledge retention from training sessions that we had run. And we found that most people take a training, a few days afterwards, they've completely forgotten 80% of what they learned in their training. And we noticed that when people were part of a community of practice after that training, and we kept enforcing or reinforcing the training that they had by giving them work to do, even if it didn't have anything to do with their current job, but we would just give them examples to keep the information top of mind. We saw a change in their behavior. And I'm wondering if you've experienced anything like that. What do you put in place to try to ensure that habit-making process?
Constantly, yes, constantly experience that. Without a doubt, we shouldn't, and I think I said before, this isn't just about going on a course and that's it, because you're completely right. We tend to adopt a 70-20-10 model of 10% of what you're going to learn you'll get from that course, and you might go on a residential for a couple of days, you've had a great time, you've learned loads of stuff, and you come back with that mindset there. But as Kevin said before, you get back into the organization, you get back into your department, maybe as a solitary person that's gone on that training, you've learnt these new things, and we start to hear those things. I'm painting a low picture here, but bear with me. We don't do that stuff around here. That's not how we do it around here. But 20% of what we do should be about embedding that in the workplace, and then 70% is very much from how we do this stuff. And we're going to come on to talk about digital data and technology, and I'll certainly, share some things about working with, very hierarchical organizations, but in terms of multidisciplinary teams. And this is where we get that real value from. Actually on the job, doing this stuff, setting up it. So a lot of the stuff that we did about that, communities of practice, setting up exemplars within organizations, within departments, where we actually learn on the job. And I mentioned before about asking questions. That's when we get the real value of the departments asking questions about themselves. How do we do this? Is this right? And once we're in that frame of mind of asking questions, we're in a learning mode, so we can start to do that. And I think it's a combination of those and other things that we can start to change the true culture of the organization.
and the freedom to make the mistake. Because if we grow up in we grow up in a society where we kind of, if you break a glass at home, you try and hide it from your mother, and we kind of take that into the workplace and try and hide the mistakes that we make, instead of saying, "I'm sorry, I think I lost this ball, I broke something. There's something not right." And I have a goal in my workplace when they stop. When I stop getting called into the office when I've done something I shouldn't have, I'm going to change a job. But I have, because I see I have a question, I have a couple of examples that I think you might find interesting. We've created an application system in Iceland where you do everything digital, and through APIs, it just gathers all the information that you need, and it goes straight into the backend system of the agency. At this agency I'm thinking about, I'm not going to say it out loud, not even after drinks tonight. They still then take it from and print it out, put it into folders and into a filing cabinet. So total waste of paper and time and everything, all the work that we've done. It's not our problem. It's not the goal of Digital Iceland to go into agencies, but that's something that we want to do, and we've started doing that so we work with, for example, the district commissioners, who everybody thought that would be the most conservative in everything. In Iceland, there are 9 district commissioners, and they are fully digital. They are our leading agencies that are going digitizing everything that they've done, and they've created within the organizational chart, they have like a side chart with the digital leaders that work into each section. So they have been able to implement this. And for me, I usually tell us, okay, if the district commissioners can do it, you guys can do it. So it's a matter of willingness and being open to change.
So one final, you've been very patiently stood up. So I'm assuming.
No. Yeah?
Yeah.
Not so much a question. I'm just going to bullishly insert myself into the panel for a moment. Sorry for that. I'm Erica Visso. I'm the Director General of our Digital Academy here in Canada. And I just wanted to, like I said, insert myself into the panel to make sure that folks are aware of what we have available at the Digital Academy here through the Canada School of Public Service. We have over 60 courses in the catalog. We put out a new micro-learning article almost every week. We have at least one event a month on learning. And that's all available to you free of charge. If you don't know about it, search me out during the day. If it's not working for you, search me out during the day. I want to know why it doesn't work for you so that we can change it and adjust it. But also really what I wanted to stand up here and say is that we've proudly relaunched our accelerator program a week and a half ago. We took about an 18-month pause on that program because we needed to redesign it to make sure it could be scalable. It is an experiential program, team-based, multidisciplinary teams that come in, apply the learning. You're not just taking a course, but you're actually solving a problem with a facilitated team. But it wasn't scalable for us in the past. It was very time intensive, both for learners and for us to administer. But we've redesigned it, we've relaunched it. We have 10 teams that just started going through it. And the way we've redesigned it is that it can be scaled in your organization. So if you don't want to come to the school to do it virtually, you can take all those materials and deliver in your own organization. Again, all of those materials free of charge available to you, and we can help coach you up. So search me out during the day, send me an email. Would really love to talk to all of you. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, Erica. We're into the last 5 minutes. I've not been given the signal. Now I have, look. We're into the last 5 minutes. So we're going to talk about digital data and technology frameworks. Richard, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. But just to pick up on that last point, it's really important that we do take that back into the organisations. That contextual application of this back within your organisations just sits there so much better, and it starts to tell the story across the organisation. When I took this into Police Scotland, National Police Force up in Scotland, my gosh, the looks that we had turning up with a multidisciplinary team and sitting there on a bank of desks, the first example of this in Police Scotland. And you've got people, with sort of like custard on the shoulders and things like that and lots of stuff down here, senior officers looking at you and thinking, who's that beardo over there with these people and what they all doing? You know, they're stood up and they're talking, and all the testers are sat there with the developers, and I've got actual coppers there, you know, I've got police officers there that are involved on a daily basis, and I've got these true multidisciplinary teams there that are absolutely, and we've shortened the time that it takes to take cases from bagging and tagging, sorry for the graphic details, but bagging and tagging at the scene of crime right through a complicated, and I'd say at times complex, criminal justice system right through to court. You know, plugging in multiple different stakeholders because of that. Because I think we took that to the organisation and we started a groundswell right across Police Scotland. And there's some real successes there. So that's some of the stuff that's I just want to flag you again because it's a valid thing. I'm going to weep in a minute.
2 minutes on DDAT.
So DDAT, right. The Digital Data and Technology Framework. Who does that mean anything to at all? DDAT or Digital Data and Technology? 1, 2, you don't count. 3, 4. Okay, right. So we started, and this is an absolute whistle stop. Let's have a conversation about this throughout the day, if you like. Digital data and technology. The mid-2010s, we had a problem of technology, work practices had moved on. We had an absolute, in UK government, an absolute dependency on contractors, on external people coming in and doing stuff. We wanted to build that capability within government. We also wanted to create parity from department to department. I worked in one large department, and in the same building across the landing, there was another large department, and you could physically see people getting up, walking across and applying for jobs there because they had better pay and conditions or they worked. So it was, partly these things, okay? So starting off from, like I say, mid-2010s, focused on 4 key areas, really. Policy, data, delivery, and analysis of that stuff as well. So focused on these core areas, building that out to have individual job roles, competencies, those types of things from these 4 main areas, we started to grow capability across UK government. So we went from a few hundred people to 25,000 now. But, we do have just a couple of minutes on this. So we've got this thing. If you can think, who knows the SOPHIA framework, skills framework for the information age?
Well,
no. So very much focused on granular skills.
I usually try and translate. If you want me to translate, just let me know.
So this is a framework that focuses on, particularly for digital development type people, granular skills. Okay. What DDAT did for us was put this up so that we could look at job families, so we can look at matching skills in job families, so we can look at pay and conditions, and so really importantly, we can look at career progression. All right. So that was sort of like what we did then. What we're doing now, and we're actively doing this in departments now, there's colleagues of mine in the room, they're actively doing this in UK departments now, is taking that further. And sort of like, a little working title for this with us, it's DDAT, Digital Data and Technology plus Delta. Because we don't really know, I talk a lot about complexity, you know that by now. We don't really know what those next skills look like, but we need to have the capability, the competency, the communication within all of these professions to understand and have the ability to move on. So really happy to talk about that later, but I've blown my time. Well and truly blown my time.
Yeah, I think we're out of time. So we're all around all day and tomorrow. Richard has a pulpit upstairs outside the main, a desk, a bench outside the main conference. So he can talk in more detail about digital data and technology. And it's probably just worth saying that we're looking to expand this framework because when we started it 5 years ago, we really didn't have AI scientists in government. We had data scientists, but we didn't have anybody in AI. Things like defining what we want to get out of AI in the future are one of the things we're looking to expand in the framework, and it will evolve accordingly. And much to Erica's point, all this stuff is available online for free. So knock yourself out. It's on gov.uk if you want to find it. Thank you.
Thank you.